Thank you everyone for making it here today to this webinar on using your voice, an introduction to dictation. The idea of today's session is an introduction, so just really giving you an idea of what you can use, how to set it up and what student it's useful for. And really the main thing today that I want is for you to go out and use it. So we're really going to try and push that. Before we get started, I'm just going to launch a poll. It's just going to ask you if you've used dictation before. Okay, so I'm just launching that now. You should be able to see that on your screen. Okay, great, quick responses. So we've got a bit of a mixture then. So 40% have used it lots, which is good. 40% have used it a little, and 20% have not used it at all. So we've got a good mix there. Thank you for that. Helps me know. I'd be interested in having some ideas from those who've used it a lot as well, to see what your experience has been from it so far. So today we're going to judge our success on whether you actually go out and use dictation successfully with a learner or some learners, or if you've already been doing it, if you continue to do so and it helps you. I'd love to know how well it worked with you, whether you're trying something different or something for the first time. I'd like you to use it yourself. I think it makes a real difference if you can actually use the software and find out what the issues are. If you share it with other staff, and if you request some more information on dictation. So if this is popular today, then we can look at perhaps running a more advanced webinar, going into some more points on either Google Docs or Dragon or whatever you'd like to know about. We're very led by what you want to learn and what you want to try, so please let us know. And not success is, I didn't want to put failure, it sounds too negative. So if you do none of those things in the previous column, and then you can let us know why it didn't work for you, or what you'd want to change with it. And of course, tell everyone that Phil should do the webinars from now on. That might be my secret aim of today. So first of all, rather than starting with the technology, let's start with the students that we're going to be working with. So it works best with students with clear voices. It doesn't need to necessarily be students with clear voices, but it does certainly help if they do have clear voices. There are ways of programming with Dragon and corrections that you can kind of build up a limited and small vocabulary and grow from there, adding more and more words and more phrases as you go along. But if we're talking today about an introduction, we won't be going into that much depth with that. Ideally, want learners who've got a good comprehension of using the software. Sometimes what we find with those using Dragon isn't the fact that they can't use their voice. They talk very clearly to other people, but then talking to a computer is a very different thing. We need students who have a good level of resilience. I've asked some people about what they thought was the most important thing, and when did they see learners using the dictation software successfully, and they said resilience. Because if students can't deal with when it goes wrong, then they will struggle to use this kind of software, because there are mistakes often in it. So yeah, comfortable making mistakes and who have good support. It is one of those things that's quite heavy on support initially. You could teach a whole class something else like a screen reader or using mind mapping perhaps, but with dictation, generally the best results are to have that kind of one-on-one time. So yeah, it's very important to assess and have in your mind students who you think will be good for this. So today, what I'd like you to do is actually think of a learner or some learners and go away and use it with them and try it with them. Obviously, feel free to try it first with yourself. but I'd really love to hear back from you that you've tried this and it's worked, or if it hasn't, how we can help you to get that working. So setup, ideally a quiet space. I have done some fairly recently with the college, and one was in their kind of communal area. It was pretty chaotic. It still worked, but a quiet space is much better. A good headset is very important. And when I say good headset, it'd be good to have one that's noise cancelling, something that's comfortable. One ear or two ear is fine. It just depends on the student. Obviously, one ear will mean that you can pay attention to what's going on in the room, but sometimes, obviously, you don't want to lose attention from the work itself, in which case you'd probably want both ears on there. Want something hard wearing. USB is better, as the processing happens in the headset itself, and you're not reliant on the computer sound card. And we haven't heard good things about Bluetooth. So there is a delay generally, and there are issues. And cabled often is more reliable. So you want to do it at the best time for concentration. When I started with one particular student, we were doing it at the last session in the end of the day, and he was so tired, he just didn't have the concentration, and he wasn't enjoying it. So we switched it to an earlier time, and he worked much better at that point. Try and do a test run. Always better to test and see if it works, and see what the issues are. When you start working with a student, you might want to decide the first session you'll just do a demonstration of it and talk about all the things about it, what the issues are, what other people find, just to ease them in gently. That has quite good success with some students who you think might really struggle with this. The other option is just to have a play and make it a very explorative type session, in which case the student, you can just have a conversation with them, see what it picks up, and rather than correcting, actually just looking and seeing with a kind of element of curiosity what it's picked up. You can make this collaborative as well. If you use the inbuilt mic in a laptop, or a mic without the noise cancelling, you can have a few students going, but of course that would work better with something like Google Docs, where there's a generic voice profile. I'll talk about that in a bit. And switch access is available. So with both Google Docs and Dragon Dictation, you can use the keyboard shortcut, map it to a switch, and then go ahead and use a switch to start and stop the recording. So for students who struggle to access, that might be their one barrier to using dictation, and then that will work quite well. For that, you'll need a joy cable, you'll need the switch, you'll need software, something like Switch Driver, where you can map keyboard combinations to a switch, and then go ahead and use it. Okay. The first one that we're going to try is Google Docs. It doesn't require internet and a Gmail account. We have helped our students set up Gmail accounts, but we've just made sure that we take into account kind of data protection and safeguarding issues, as with any publicly facing account, and talking them through what the agreements mean, just to kind of ensure that they understand what their voice information is going to be used for. The good thing about it is no training, so you can just open the document and get stuck in straight away. There's no need to save documents, they save live. I don't know if you've ever had that frustrating thing where you've spent a long time creating a piece of work with a student and then they might have just accidentally clicked close. Can be quite frustrating. So that's quite helpful, and it'll be available everywhere. So anywhere they log on with that account. There are some issues with punctuation. I'll see if I can demonstrate that. It uses a generic voice profile, which means that there's no training. It might not work for everyone, but it does use a the Google kind of probability of what words are likely to come next to each other, which some students really like. Okay, there are some issues with punctuation. It doesn't work with other apps as well. Unfortunately, it's inbuilt in Google Docs, so you can't use it to open anything else or to navigate the internet. And it's free, which is a real bonus. Okay then, so I'm just going to switch now to do a demonstration. Right, so on Google Chrome, if you go to the side over here, there's what I call the waffle icon. I'm actually already signed in at this point, so I won't cover creating a Google account. But if you click on the waffle icon and then go down to more, there's Docs. Okay, and when you're in Docs, you can either resume your recent documents, which are stored along the bottom here, or you can open a new document. Okay, so once you're in a new document, you can type as usual, but what we're going to be doing here is going to Tools, going to Voice Typing, and you can choose your language. We had a European project recently, and they tried a variety of the different languages, and they all worked fairly well, which is good. So it might be used with students who are studying languages. So we're going to go English UK. Then when I click to speak, it will listen to me and take down everything that I say. Full stop, new line. So that's the perfect demonstration of one of the issues with the punctuation. And you can right click on it and choose what you meant to say. So there we go. Let's go to that. So with some students, we just get them to use the punctuation on the keyboard, or get them to change the kind of flow of how they speak to suit it. But initially, for most students, we're not focused on punctuation that much. We just want them to get down the ideas of what they want to say. Some students speak word by word. And as you can see by that, it then doesn't work out the context of each word. It will try and work out what is separately, what the likeliness of that word is. If we try again, some students speak word by word. Then it works out the context of which you're speaking in, and generally get a lot more success with using that. Okay, so that's the Google Docs tool. If you go down to Tool and Voice Typing, there's a Control-Shift-S shortcut, and that's what you'd be mapping to the switch. So then students can use the switch to start and stop it. With quite a few students, we often get them to actually talk with a staff member. This works much better the first time they use it, if we want them to talk more naturally, rather than thinking that they're talking to a computer, because they'll often look at the screen and concentrate on the screen rather than what they're saying. It's quite an effort to think about what you want to say, click the speak button, and then say it clearly. And I think if you try it yourselves, you'll see that that takes up a certain level of concentration. So initially with students, we say half an hour is generally a good amount of time that you want to be spending working on it. There is something important that I say to people, which is stop at the top. So once a student's doing really well, once they're feeling a sense of success, once they feel they want to come back to it, then stop. Obviously, you probably want a little bit of time, but once they're coming to the end of the session, if you're on a high point, then stop there. That way they're more likely to want to use it, they're more likely to want to practice it by themselves, and they're more likely to see it as something fun and enjoyable and something that brings them independence rather than something that they failed at, rather than something that they've struggled at, or something that they are really dreading. And it's important to give them a choice as well sometimes. So initially we want them to try it, so we're pushing it, but then as time goes on, there might be certain things that they choose to use dictation, and sometimes when they choose to use another input method. Just depends on that student. You know them best. Yeah, so that's Google Docs. Switch back to the PowerPoint. Okay. And let's talk about Dragon Naturally Speaking. Okay, so the downside of Dragon Naturally Speaking is that it requires the training of a voice profile. This can be quite difficult for certain students, especially if they're struggling to read. There are many ways of helping them through this. So one of the common ones is just whispering in their ear as they're talking. But you could set up another computer with the text from the training, and you could play that to them. Or it might just be a case of taking that text and putting it in an easy format. So for some students, I'm just making sure that each line is on a separate line and then pointing at the line as they come to it. And it just helps them track it with their eyes. But once again, just the students best, so work out how you're going to get them to talk to the computer. The good thing is it doesn't need to be the text that is in the suggested training. It's better if it is, but one student was particularly interested on theatre and shows, so I just asked him a few very open questions and he began talking about it. I pressed start and it recorded him, and it built up a good voice profile because he was speaking consistently. For some students, it might be quite hard to get them to talk the first time. So you might need to even leave them and let them have a go themselves, or work with other staff that they feel more comfortable with. It's just worth considering how much it makes people feel a bit nervous when they're talking to a computer or doing something that looks different from their peers. The Dragon Naturally Speaking is very accurate, which is probably the best thing about it, is that it can be corrected over time and it can improve, and this is something where you can get very high levels of accuracy. It can control the computer as well, which is useful, so you can make it open Word documents, you can get it to send emails, you can get it to search the web. There's a lot of things that you can do with it. It can crash sometimes. We had a few issues with Microsoft Word. Sometimes it can just be which order you open the files in. It's a bit of a downside, but once you become aware of the fixes, then it's a lot easier. And Dragon Nuance do offer some support with that. It can be used in exam situations, which is a bonus. It depends on the exam board generally, but it has to be their usual way of working. And it's there are methods of creating using a laptop that is kind of blank and wiped, and then having it especially with having them train their voice profile on it before, and then you can go into exams with that. There are computer requirements for Dragon. You're generally looking for certain level of CPU, a certain amount of memory, but the higher the spec, the quicker the response. You don't want a delay for some students, because they'll say what they want to say, and then if they don't see it on the screen, they'll say it again, and then of course you'll get actually both bits of text on the screen then. So that can be a bit of a pain. So we're going to show Dragon Naturally Speaking. I'm going to start it from a new profile just to show you the whole training process. And so let's share my screen. So I've pinned it onto my start menu here, just so it's easy to get to. The load up time isn't too bad. And these are the previous profiles that I've got here. We're going to go to a new profile. Okay, next. Okay, let's call this one webinar today. Next. Okay, we're not United States, United Kingdom, and standard. So there'll be differences on the kind of voice model that they create based on the region that you select and the accent that you choose. Go to next. Okay, I should see my mic there, and I should see the bar moving up and down. There is a microphone built in this laptop as well, which works quite well, but obviously then you don't get that directional mic. Okay, position the microphone properly. So generally I just say 2 finger widths away from the corner of your mouth, and you want it just to the side as well, just so it can't hear you breathing. Okay, so this is the reading text. So this is the one that I said you can adapt. So if you want to select it, you can copy it and put it elsewhere. And when you're ready, you can hit start and then do the training text. So let's see how it goes. I'm reading this text out loud, clearly and naturally. I will continue to use this tone when I dictate with the product. Right now, I'm giving Dragon a chance to adapt to my voice and audio environment. As I talk, Dragon is checking the quality of the audio input and adjusting some settings. Good audio input is essential for accurate speech recognition. To achieve accuracy, I should maintain a consistent distance between my mouth and the microphone. I should also minimize background noise. Dragon's website contains more tips as well as short videos. I will read this text from the beginning until the complete prompt appears. Okay, so it should have finished, but it hasn't. Often you'll have this, or you'll actually have it where you've spoken for a very short time and then it's cut off for you. The best thing to do is just to keep talking, and eventually, thankfully, it finishes. Some students, it will need a lot less time to build a voice profile, but that's not to worry. And you can do that as many times as you want, but it depends on the student's resilience to that kind of feeling that they don't want to do it again and again and again. Okay, so it'll build a voice profile for me now. It's a bit of kind of trial and error sometimes with the voice profiles. So you get an indication once you start using it, whether it's trained it properly or not. Okay. And this will take a little bit longer if you have an older computer, and yeah, less time if you've got higher specs. It has crashed before when I've been at that point, which is always fun. Okay, well, we're going to don't enable this now because we don't want any of our data to be used or sent off. Okay, here we go, next. Here we go, and finish. So then it'll initialize for the first time, and we get to have a look at the Dragon bar here. There are 3 colors for the icon here. One of them is red, which means it's not listening and you can't wake it up with a voice command. There's blue, which means it is listening and you can wake it up with wake up. And then there's green, which means it is listening. So you can get your learners to learn what those mean. Often we try and start it up so it's listening, so students just have one less step, and then they can use it just with their voice. For some learners, you'll want them to do everything. You'll want them to be using it to open Microsoft Word. You'll want it to be sending emails. For others, you'll want them just to be writing down text using their voice. It depends on the individual. So here it is. It'll give you some tips the first few times. Generally, they kind of get in the way, but we'll get past that. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on it to start it. Go to sleep. Okay, so there we see the three different colors, the red, the green, and then back to the blue. So now it's in a state where it can be woken up. So let's try it with Microsoft Word. Wake up. Open Microsoft Word. Now we can see that Dragon is working properly, comma. I should be able to speak at a fairly standard pace, and it should take down everything that I'm saying. Okay, didn't work. So okay, so let's try it again. Comma. So what we saw then made no sense at all, but that's sometimes what happens. So it's just sometimes a case of stopping it, listening, and then starting again. Full stop. New line. That's obviously quite difficult with some students, as they'll see it as an error on their part, comma. It's why it's good initially to demonstrate the software and give them time to get used to it. But you also need to make sure that you're reassuring them and telling them that it isn't their fault when it isn't their fault. Full stop. Select paragraph. Center that. Bold that. Bold that. Go to sleep. Okay, so that was quite a lot of text to write all at once. We tried a bit of formatting there as well. For some students, we'll just be starting with some much more simple sentences. So kind of one line at a time and seeing how accurate it is. It isn't worth getting caught up on every mistake at this point. We just want them to get their ideas down, and that's what's most important. So that was essentially how to get started with Dragon. When you're finished, you can go to the Dragon bar and exit Dragon. It'll take a little bit of time to shut down. Yeah, you can save that if you want. I'm going to say no. Yeah. Okay, so others. There are others to compare to. When we've used Windows before, we haven't had much success with students. It takes much more time to train it, and we've found there's more errors. So we've generally not used Windows too much. But they are making some promises that they are going to develop this some more. They're keeping their cards quite close to their chest at the moment, but given that they have intentions to really improve the accessibility of software, then we can probably expect an improvement to that at some point in the future. A few others of note, there's one called Brainer, and that works with computers, but then there's an Android plugin that you can use to control the computer. That's quite interesting, and of course mobile phones as well. So often if students feel reluctant to use a computer, then you can just use this on your keypad. So on any Android or on any Apple device, once you've opened up the keyboard, there's a microphone symbol there. So yeah, good way to get using it everywhere. Okay, we've got one more poll. So, yeah, I've got just a finishing poll. So I'd like to know what you'll do after today, if that's okay. So the choices are to use Google Docs, to use Dragon Naturally Speaking, to use any of the other systems you've seen, or anything that you want, or a combination of the above, or not use any of the above. Okay, so that should be with you now. Okay, so we've got 80% in voted. Just give you another minute or so. Okay, great. So we've got 100% voted. So let's close that poll. There we go. So 20% have said they'll use Dragon Naturally Speaking, and then 80% a combination of the above. I think that's really positive. The combination often that we do is with, we'll use Google Docs to introduce students to dictation, as it's very low pressure. There's no training process, and it's very simple. So there's nothing with commands to get confused about. It's just starting to use it. If they progress and we want them to start controlling a computer, or using it in exams, or using it in alongside other apps, then we'll proceed to using Dragon Naturally Speaking. But yeah, the main thing is just to get stuck in and try it with students, and try it with yourself first as well. So that's the end of all the content that I've got for you. We've kept it quite simple because we just want you to go away and use it if you haven't. If you've got any requests for further content, further questions you'd like to know about dictation, we'll put them into a more advanced presentation. And we'll also make this recording and the slides available for anyone that wants to use them. If anyone has any questions now, then feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll read them out. Or alternatively, you can contact me with the email that I've attached there. Okay, yeah, thank you very much for being here today, and yeah, any questions and I'll read them out. Thank you.